The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched for miles in every direction. Floating platforms held representatives from 400 different worlds, each species more alien than the last. Some breathed methane, others lived in water tanks, and a few existed as pure energy contained in crystal shells. Despite their differences, they all shared one thing in common today: fear. At the center of the hall, a massive hologram showed the latest battle reports. The Zephyrian Empire had struck again. This time they had destroyed 3 entire star systems in less than a day. The images were horrifying. Planets turned to ash, space stations melted into metal clouds, and millions of lives snuffed out in seconds. The Zephyrians were not the largest species in the galaxy, but they were the most feared. Their bodies were made of living crystal that could deflect most weapons. Their ships were black as space itself and bristled with quantum disruptors, weapons that could tear apart matter at the smallest level. When a quantum disruptor fired, whatever it hit simply stopped existing. Council Speaker Thelvan, a tall being with blue skin and 6 arms, called for order. Her voice carried across the hall through translation devices that turned her words into sounds each species could understand. "The Zephyrian Empire has ignored our peace treaties again," she announced. "They have declared war on the Alteran Trade Federation. All 17 worlds in that system have already surrendered without firing a single shot." A low murmur ran through the assembly. This was always how it went. The Zephyrians would point their quantum disruptors at a world, and that world would give up immediately. No one wanted to face those terrible weapons. "What about military intervention?" asked Ambassador Kroll, whose species looked like giant crabs. "Surely we cannot let this continue." Thelvan's expression grew even more grim. "The Zephyrians have 1,000 ships armed with quantum disruptors. We have estimates that say they could destroy every world in Council space within a month if we oppose them." The hall fell silent. Everyone knew she was right. The Zephyrians had spent centuries perfecting their weapons while other species focused on trade, art, and peaceful exploration. Now that gap in military power seemed impossible to close. "There is more," Thelvan continued. "Intelligence reports say the Zephyrians are planning another attack. They have chosen their next target." The hologram changed to show a small blue and green planet orbiting a yellow star. Most of the representatives had never seen this world before, but the data scrolling beside it made them lean forward with interest. "The planet is called Earth," Thelvan explained. "Its inhabitants call themselves humans. They achieved faster than light travel only months ago. The Zephyrians consider them a threat that must be eliminated before they can grow stronger." Ambassador Kroll made a sound that his translator turned into laughter. "A threat? They just learned to travel between stars. What weapons could they possibly have?" The intelligence file opened, showing images of human military equipment. The assembled beings stared in disbelief. The humans still used chemical explosives and metal projectiles. Their most advanced weapons threw small pieces of metal at speeds barely faster than sound. Compared to quantum disruptors that worked at light speed, human weapons looked like children's toys. "This is their most powerful weapon," Thelvan said, highlighting an image of a human nuclear missile. "It uses atomic fusion to create an explosion. By our standards, it is extremely primitive." "Then why are the Zephyrians concerned?" asked a representative whose species communicated through color changes on their skin. "Unknown," Thelvan admitted. "Perhaps they simply want to eliminate any potential competition while it is still weak." On the far edge of Zephyrian space, Admiral Kethrall stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Void Render. The ship was 5 miles long and armed with enough quantum disruptors to crack a moon in half. Around him, his crystal-bodied crew worked at control stations that glowed with inner light. "Report," Kethrall ordered. His voice sounded like rocks grinding together. "The human ship has been detected at the edge of our territory," reported his tactical officer. "Long-range scans confirm primitive technology. Chemical propulsion, metal hull construction, and kinetic weapons only." Kethrall felt something like satisfaction flow through his crystalline form. The reports had been accurate. These humans were even more backward than expected. Their ship looked crude and blocky compared to the elegant curves of Zephyrian vessels. "How many ships do they have?" he asked. "Just one, Admiral. It appears to be some kind of diplomatic vessel." "Interesting. They come to negotiate." Kethrall's laugh resonated through the bridge like breaking glass. "They do not yet understand that there is nothing to negotiate. Ready the quantum disruptors." All weapons charged and ready, sir. Catherall studied the tactical display. The human ship was small, probably carrying no more than a few dozen crew members. Its weapons were laughably primitive. The intelligence report said humans used metal projectiles that moved at chemical speeds. Such weapons could not even scratch Zephyrian shields, much less their crystal hulls. "Bring us within range," he ordered. "But do not fire yet. I want to speak with these humans first. Let them understand what they face before we destroy them." The Void Render and its escort ships moved toward the human vessel. As they approached, Catherall felt the familiar thrill of coming battle. This would be over quickly. The humans would see the quantum disruptors charging up and surrender immediately, just like every other species in the galaxy. After all, everyone knew what happened when the Zephyrians aimed their weapons at you. The smart ones gave up right away. The stubborn ones got to see their ships dissolved into individual atoms before they died. Either way, the result was always the same. Back in the council chambers, the representatives watched the approaching confrontation through long-range sensors. The human ship looked tiny compared to the 3 Zephyrian dreadnoughts moving toward it. Even the bravest species in the galaxy would have turned and run from such odds. "Should we send a warning?" asked one representative. Thelvan shook her head sadly. "It would take days for any message to reach them. By then this will be over." "Perhaps it is for the best," muttered Ambassador Kroll. "If the humans surrender quickly, the Zephyrians might be satisfied with taking their ship. Not every first contact needs to end in death." But deep down, everyone in the hall knew better. The Zephyrians had not become the most feared empire in the galaxy by showing mercy. They had built their reputation on one simple principle. Anyone who opposed them, even by accident, would be destroyed completely and without hesitation. The quantum disruptors on those 3 ships carried enough power to vaporize a small moon. Against one primitive human vessel, it would be like using a star destroyer to swat a fly. "May their deaths be quick," whispered Thelvan, and throughout the hall, 400 different species offered prayers for the humans they had never met. None of them could imagine what was about to happen. In their long history of galactic civilization, no species had ever reacted to Zephyrian weapons with anything but immediate, overwhelming terror. But then again, no species like humanity had ever existed before. The human ship Defiance dropped out of faster-than-light travel with a flash of blue energy. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge looking out at the stars through the main view screen. After months of travel from Earth, they had finally reached the edge of what the aliens called Zephyrian space. "Well, this is it," she said to her crew. "First contact with an alien empire. Everyone ready?" Her security chief, Marcus Rodriguez, checked his weapon for the 3rd time. It was a simple railgun that fired metal slugs using magnetic force. Compared to the energy weapons he had seen in science fiction movies, it seemed almost primitive. But it was reliable, accurate, and packed enough punch to stop anything he had ever faced. "Ready as we'll ever be, Captain," he replied, "though I still think we should have brought more firepower." Dr. Elena Vasquez, the ship's science officer, looked up from her instruments. She was a small woman with dark hair and curious eyes that seemed to take in everything around her. "The alien transmissions we picked up suggested they prefer diplomatic solutions. Maybe we won't need weapons at all." Chen nodded, though she kept one hand near the communication controls. Earth's government had sent them out here to make contact with alien civilizations and hopefully establish trade relationships. The radio signals they had detected suggested advanced technology that could benefit both species. "Contact on sensors," announced the navigator. 3 ships, very large. "They're moving toward us." "Alien ships?" Chen asked. "Definitely. The design is completely different from anything human. They look like they're made of black crystal." Chen felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. This was the moment humanity had dreamed about for centuries, meeting another intelligent species among the stars. She activated the communication system and broadcast on all frequencies. "Alien vessels, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth ship Defiance. We come in peace and wish to establish diplomatic contact." The response came almost immediately. The voice that emerged from the speakers sounded like grinding stone, but the translation system their computers had built from intercepted alien transmissions made the words clear. "Human vessel, you have entered Zephyrian space without permission. I am Admiral Catherall of the Imperial Fleet. You will surrender immediately or be destroyed." Chen blinked in surprise. That was not the greeting she had expected. Admiral, there seems to be a misunderstanding. We are peaceful explorers seeking diplomatic contact. We had no intention of trespassing. There is no misunderstanding, Kethral replied coldly. Your species has been marked for elimination. You have 1 minute to surrender or we will open fire. On the view screen, the 3 alien ships had come close enough to see clearly. They were massive, each one at least 5 times larger than the Defiance. Their black crystal hulls seemed to absorb light, making them look like holes in space. Along their sides, Chen could see what were obviously weapons. Long tubes that glowed with purple energy. Those must be their guns, Rodriguez observed, studying the alien ships through binoculars. Interesting design. They look like some kind of directed energy weapons. Energy weapons. Dr. Vasquez leaned forward to get a better look. Like laser cannons? That's actually quite elegant from an engineering standpoint. Chen frowned. The weapons were certainly impressive looking, but she had seen enough military hardware to recognize the basic principles. They appear to be charging up some kind of energy discharge system, probably plasma-based or particle beam technology. 30 seconds, Admiral Kethral announced over the radio. Surrender now or face the power of our quantum disruptors. Quantum disruptors? Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. That sounds fancy. What do you think they actually do? Vasquez was already running calculations on her tablet. Based on the energy readings I'm picking up, they appear to fire concentrated beams that disrupt molecular bonds. Essentially, they make matter fall apart at the atomic level. Huh, Rodriguez said. So they're disintegration rays. That's actually pretty cool. Chen looked at her crew in amazement. Here they were, facing alien superweapons pointed directly at their ship, and her people were discussing them like interesting pieces of technology rather than instruments of death. Time is up, Kethral announced. Prepare to witness the power that has conquered 1,000 worlds. The purple glow along the alien weapons grew brighter. Energy readings spiked as the quantum disruptors reached full charge. Then, with a flash of violet light, all 3 ships fired at once. The beams struck a large asteroid floating nearby. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the entire asteroid simply vanished as if it had never existed at all. Not even dust remained. Chen's crew watched this display with professional interest. Impressive range and targeting, Rodriguez noted. Clean disintegration with no secondary debris. That would be useful for mining operations. The power requirements must be enormous, Vasquez added. I'm reading massive energy expenditures from their ships. They probably can't fire those weapons very often without recharging. Did you see that, humans? Kethral's voice boomed over the radio. That asteroid was larger than your entire ship. In seconds, our quantum disruptors reduced it to nothing. This is the fate that awaits all who oppose the Zephyrian Empire. Chen activated her microphone. Admiral, that was certainly an impressive demonstration. Your mining technology is quite advanced. We would be interested in discussing possible trade agreements for such equipment. Silence filled the radio channel for several long seconds. When Kethral spoke again, his voice carried a note of confusion. Mining technology? Those were quantum disruptors, the most feared weapons in the galaxy. Oh, Chen replied. You mean those are weapons? They look very similar to the industrial plasma cutters we use for asteroid processing. Yours have a nice purple color, though. Ours are usually more of a blue-white. On the Zephyrian flagship, Admiral Kethral stared at his communication officer in disbelief. Did they just compare our quantum disruptors to mining equipment? Yes, Admiral, the officer replied, his crystal form flickering with confusion. They seemed genuinely unimpressed. Kethral had conquered dozens of star systems using these same tactics. The mere sight of quantum disruptors charging up was enough to make entire fleets retreat in terror. These weapons could disintegrate any known material in seconds. They were the ultimate expression of Zephyrian technological superiority. And the humans thought they looked like mining lasers. Perhaps they do not understand, suggested his tactical officer. They are a primitive species. They may not comprehend what they are seeing. Kethral nodded slowly. That had to be it. The humans were too backward to recognize advanced weapons when they saw them. He would have to explain things more clearly. Human vessel, he broadcast. These are not mining tools. These are weapons of war. They can destroy your ship instantly. You should be afraid. Another pause, then Captain Chen's voice came back, sounding genuinely puzzled. Afraid of what exactly? They're just big energy projectors. We've been building similar devices for decades. Yours are certainly more advanced, but the basic principle is the same. We can vaporize your ship, Kethril roared. Well, yes, Chen replied calmly. Most weapons can destroy most targets if you apply enough energy. That's kind of how physics works. Kethril felt something he had not experienced in centuries of warfare. Complete bewilderment. Every species in the galaxy feared quantum disruptors. The weapons were so terrifying that most wars ended before they began, with entire civilizations surrendering rather than face them. But these humans were treating them like slightly interesting pieces of equipment. What kind of species had the Empire encountered? Back in the Galactic Council chambers, emergency sessions were being broadcast across hundreds of worlds. The long-range sensors had picked up the confrontation between the humans and the Zephyrians, and the recordings were being studied by every military analyst in known space. Speaker Thelvan stood before the assembled representatives, her 6 arms gesturing at the holographic display showing the encounter. As you can see, the humans have not surrendered. In fact, they appear to be having a casual conversation with Admiral Kethril. The representatives murmured among themselves in dozens of different languages. What they were watching made no sense according to everything. They knew about galactic warfare, perhaps. Their translation systems are malfunctioning, suggested Ambassador Kroll. Maybe. They do not understand what quantum disruptors are. No, replied Dr. Zendari, the Council's leading expert on military psychology. She was a tall, thin being with large eyes that seemed to see everything. Our analysis of their communication shows perfect translation accuracy. The humans understand exactly what they are facing. Then why are they not afraid? Asked a representative whose species looked like living plants. Dr. Zendari pulled up another display, this one showing psychological profiles of different galactic species. To understand this, we must examine how different species evolved and what they learned to fear. The display showed images of various alien homeworlds. Most were peaceful places where the dominant species had evolved as herbivores or had developed advanced technology early enough to eliminate natural predators. The Altarians evolved on a world with no large predators, Dr. Zendari explained. The Zephyrians themselves developed crystal bodies that made them nearly invulnerable to physical attack. Most Council species achieved spaceflight before they ever faced truly deadly threats. What does this have to do with weapons? Asked Thelvan. Everything, Dr. Zendari replied. When we developed energy weapons, they represented something completely new, unavoidable death. A plasma beam travels at light speed. A particle cannon can track targets across star systems. When such a weapon is aimed at you, there is no escape, no defense, no hope of survival. This is why we fear them. She switched the display to show images of Earth, and the assembled beings gasped. The planet's history was filled with massive predators, natural disasters, and constant warfare between the humans themselves. Humans evolved on what we would classify as a death world, Dr. Zendari continued. For 200,000 years they have faced threats that wanted to kill them. Lions, bears, tigers, other humans with spears and swords. They learned to fight back against impossible odds. The display showed human history, battles where small groups fought against overwhelming enemies, last stands where humans refused to surrender, even when facing certain death, and countless examples of humans treating deadly threats as problems to be solved, rather than reasons to give up. Observe their reaction to the quantum disruptor demonstration, Dr. Zendari said, replaying the footage. They show professional interest rather than fear. To them, it is simply another weapon, and weapons are things that can be fought against. Ambassador Kroll's crab-like claws clicked nervously. But quantum disruptors are not like primitive weapons. They cannot be dodged or blocked. The humans do not know that yet, Dr. Zendari replied. And more importantly, they would not care if they did. Their entire species is built around the concept that any threat can be overcome with enough determination and clever thinking. On the human ship, Dr. Vasquez was explaining exactly this to Admiral Kethril over the communication channel. The Zephyrian commander had been trying for 20 minutes to make the humans understand how afraid they should be. Admiral, I think there may be a cultural misunderstanding here, Vasquez said patiently. In human history, we have faced many types of threats. We learn to adapt and survive. These are not threats, Kethril insisted. These are certainties. When a quantum disruptor fires at you, you die. There is no defense, no escape. Well, that's what they said about machine guns too, Captain Chen interjected. Then we invented tanks, and armor, and tactics for fighting in trenches. Every weapon that seems unstoppable eventually gets countered by something else. This is different, Kethril roared. Quantum disruptors work at the molecular level. They cannot be stopped by armor or shields. Rodriguez leaned toward the microphone. What about the energy requirements? Those weapons must consume enormous amounts of power. How many times can you fire them before needing to recharge? There was a long pause before Kethril answered. That is not relevant. I bet it's relevant, Chen said with a small smile. Big energy weapons always have big energy costs. That's basic engineering. On the Zephyrian flagship, Kethril was conferring with his officers. The human questions were uncomfortably accurate. Quantum disruptors did require massive amounts of energy. Each shot drained a significant portion of the ship's power reserves. They are analyzing our weapons like a tactical problem, observed his tactical officer. Most species cannot think clearly when facing quantum disruptors. The fear overwhelms their minds. But these humans show no fear at all, Kethril said slowly. They are treating this as if we are simply another enemy to fight. Back on Earth, news of the first contact was spreading rapidly. Humans around the world watched the live broadcast with excitement rather than terror. The alien weapons looked impressive, but they were still just weapons. Humans had been fighting and defeating weapons for millennia. Military analysts studied the footage with professional interest. Energy-based directed fire systems, noted General Patricia Hayes, chairman of Earth's Joint Chiefs of Staff. Significant power requirements, probably limited rate of fire. Classic long-range siege weapons. What's our assessment for countermeasures? Asked President Martinez during an emergency briefing. Multiple options, Hayes replied. Close-range engagement to prevent proper targeting. Electronic warfare to disrupt their control systems. Kinetic bombardment to overwhelm their defenses. The usual approaches. They destroyed that asteroid pretty thoroughly, observed the Secretary of Defense. Yes, but they needed 3 ships firing simultaneously to do it, Hayes pointed out. And they had to charge their weapons for over 30 seconds first. In a real battle, we'd have plenty of time to react. This was the fundamental difference between humans and every other species in the galaxy. When other beings saw quantum disruptors, they saw unstoppable instruments of death. When humans saw them, they saw expensive, slow-firing energy weapons with obvious tactical limitations. Dr. Zandari was explaining this same concept to the Galactic Council. Humans do not have a proper fear response to energy weapons because they evolved to fight physical threats. Their minds automatically begin analyzing weaknesses and developing countermeasures. But surely they understand they are outgunned, protested one representative. That is another cultural difference, Dr. Zandari replied. Most species see overwhelming odds as a reason to surrender. Humans see overwhelming odds as an interesting challenge. She pulled up more examples from human history. Tiny groups of soldiers holding off massive armies. Explorers crossing deadly terrain that everyone said was impossible. Inventors creating solutions to problems that everyone said could not be solved. This is their nature, she concluded. They do not give up even when giving up is the logical choice. It is what allowed them to survive on their hostile homeworld, and it is what makes them so dangerous to established galactic order. As if to prove her point, Captain Chen's voice came over the transmission from the confrontation site. Admiral Kethril, we appreciate the demonstration of your technology. Now shall we discuss trade agreements, or do you intend to keep waving those energy projectors around all day? The silence that followed was so complete that beings across the galaxy could hear their own breathing. Never in recorded history had anyone spoken to a Zephyrian admiral with such casual dismissal. And somewhere in the darkness of space, 3 of the most powerful warships ever built faced off against one primitive human vessel, whose crew refused to understand that they should already be dead. Admiral Kethril had reached the limit of his patience. For over an hour, he had tried to make the humans understand the hopelessness of their situation. Instead, they had asked technical questions about his weapons, compared them to mining equipment, and treated him like a minor inconvenience. Enough, he roared over the communication channel. You will learn to fear Zephyrian power. All ships prepare for final assault. We will show these humans what happens to those who mock the Empire. On the human ship, Captain Chen sighed and looked at her crew. Well, it looks like diplomacy is off the table. Rodriguez, what's our tactical situation? Her security chief studied his instruments. 3 enemy ships, roughly 5 times our mass each. Energy weapons with high destructive potential but limited rate of fire. They'll probably try to engage at long range where those big guns are most effective. Recommendations? Close the distance fast. Get inside their minimum engagement range. Those quantum disruptors look like siege weapons, powerful but not designed for close combat. Dr. Vasquez looked up from her science station. I've been analyzing their energy signatures. Each shot from those weapons drains about 15% of their total power. They can only fire 6 or 7 times before needing to recharge their entire power grid. Perfect, Chen said. Navigation, plot and intercept course. Maximum acceleration. Rodriguez, prep all weapon systems. Aye, Captain, came the replies. The Defiant suddenly changed direction, its fusion engines roaring to full power. Instead of retreating or trying to negotiate further, the human ship accelerated directly toward the 3 Zephyrian dreadnoughts. On the bridge of the Void Render, Kethril stared at his tactical display in disbelief. They are attacking us? Yes, Admiral, his tactical officer confirmed. The human ship is on a direct intercept course. Time to contact, 4 minutes. This is madness, muttered his weapons officer. 1 ship against 3? They must be suicidal. Kethril quickly considered his options. The humans were closing distance rapidly, but that actually made things easier. At close range, the quantum disruptors would tear their primitive ship apart in seconds. All ships prepare to fire, he ordered. Target the human vessel. Full spread, maximum power. The 3 Zephyrian ships moved into firing formation. Their quantum disruptors began charging with that familiar purple glow. In space combat, this was the moment when most enemies would break off their attack and retreat in terror. The human ship kept coming. 2 minutes to contact, reported the tactical officer. They show no signs of slowing down. Then they will die, Kethril said coldly. Fire when ready. The quantum disruptors reached full charge. Purple beams lanced out across space toward the approaching human ship. But something was wrong. The targeting systems, designed to lock onto the energy signatures of other spacecraft, were having trouble maintaining a lock on the human vessel. Target acquisition is unstable, reported the weapons officer. Their propulsion system is interfering with our sensors. The quantum disruptor beams missed by hundreds of meters. The human ship continued its relentless approach, now close enough that Kethril could see details of its construction. It looked crude and blocky compared to the elegant curves of Zephyrian vessels. But it was moving faster than any ship its size should be able to go. Recharge weapons, Kethril ordered. Fire again, but the second volley also missed. The human ship was moving too fast and changing direction too often for the quantum disruptors to track properly. Weapons designed to destroy large, slow-moving targets at long range were proving useless against a small, agile opponent that refused to follow standard tactical doctrine. 1 minute to contact, announced the tactical officer, his crystal form flickering with nervousness. Admiral, called the communications officer. The humans are transmitting. Captain Chen's voice filled the bridge. Admiral Kethril, we're coming alongside for a closer look at your ships. Please hold still so we don't accidentally bump into you. They want us to hold still? Kethril could barely comprehend what he was hearing. While they attack us? 30 seconds to contact. They are opening weapons ports. Kethril finally got a good look at the human weapons as they extended from the Defiance. They were small, primitive-looking tubes that bore no resemblance to any military hardware he had ever seen. They looked more like construction equipment than weapons of war. What are those? He asked. Unknown, Admiral. They appear to be some kind of magnetic acceleration devices. The human ship was now so close that it filled half the view screen. At this range, the quantum disruptors couldn't target it without risking damage to their own ships. Kethril felt a moment of grudging respect for the human. Tactical thinking, they had identified his weapon's weakness and exploited it perfectly. Then, the humans opened fire. The railguns on the Defiance launched streams of metal, slugs at 15% of light speed. The projectiles, each no larger than a human fist, struck the Zephyrian shields with devastating force. Energy barriers designed to deflect plasma and particle beams offered no resistance to solid matter. Moving at relativistic speeds, the slugs punched through the shields like they weren't there and slammed into the crystal hulls of the Zephyrian ships. The Void Render shuddered under the impacts as chunks of its crystalline armor shattered and flew away into space. Impossible, Kethril roared. Those are primitive kinetic weapons. They should not be able to penetrate our defenses. Our shields are designed to stop energy attacks, his tactical officer reported, his voice tight with panic. They are useless against solid projectiles at these velocities. More railgun slugs hammered into the void render. Warning lights flashed across the bridge as systems began failing. The beautiful crystal hull that had deflected laser fire and plasma bolts was cracking under the relentless bombardment of simple metal projectiles. Return fire, Kethril ordered desperately. Cannot target, Admiral. They are too close, moving too fast. Our quantum disruptors need time to charge and lock on. The human ship darted between the three Zephyrian vessels like an angry wasp, its railguns spitting death. It was too small and too agile for the massive alien ships to track with their siege weapons. Meanwhile, its simple kinetic guns were designed for exactly this kind of close-range engagement. Admiral, the Crystal Fang is reporting critical damage. Came a transmission from one of the escort ships. They are requesting permission to withdraw. Kethril watched in growing horror as the human ship crippled his escort with surgical precision. The humans weren't just firing randomly. They were targeting specific systems. Power generators, weapon emplacements, and engine modules were being destroyed one by one. Dr. Vasquez's voice came over the communication channel, calm and professional. Admiral, we're reading massive structural damage to your vessels. We recommend you withdraw before someone gets seriously hurt. This is impossible, Kethril whispered. We have the most advanced weapons in the galaxy. You have very expensive long-range weapons, Captain Chen corrected. We have simple, reliable close-range weapons. In this kind of fight, simple wins. The second escort ship, the Shard of Night, was now drifting powerless with its engines destroyed. The Defiance had taken some hits from defensive lasers, but its thick armor plating and redundant systems kept it fighting. Human ships were built to take punishment and keep working. Admiral, his tactical officer reported, we have lost primary weapons on decks 7 through 12. Quantum Disruptor Array 3 is completely destroyed. Shield generators are failing. Kethril realized with dawning horror that he was losing. His mighty dreadnought, armed with weapons that could destroy planets, was being systematically dismantled by a single primitive human ship using metal bullets. Sir, came another transmission, the humans are launching some kind of missiles. Kethril looked at the tactical display. Small objects were separating from the human ship and moving toward his vessels. They looked crude and simple compared to Zephyrian smart weapons, but after what he had seen today, he was no longer underestimating human technology. Point defense systems. Engage those missiles, he ordered. The Zephyrian laser defense grid activated, sending out dozens of precisely aimed beams to intercept the incoming projectiles. The lasers, designed to stop energy-based weapons and guided missiles, should have destroyed the human weapons easily. Instead, the human missiles seemed to ignore the laser fire completely. They weaved through the defensive beams like living things, their crude guidance systems somehow more effective than advanced Zephyrian targeting computers. How are they avoiding our defenses? Kethril demanded. Unknown, Admiral. Their guidance systems appear to be intuitive rather than computational. The missiles struck the void render and exploded. But these weren't energy explosions. They were simple nuclear fission devices that released massive amounts of heat and radiation. The crystal hull, designed to deflect directed energy, conducted the thermal shock throughout the entire ship structure. Cracks spread across the bridge viewport. Emergency systems activated as the ship's superstructure groaned under stresses it was never designed to handle. All around him, Kethril could hear the sound that no Zephyrian captain ever wanted to hear. His ship was breaking apart. Admiral, the tactical officer reported, his voice barely a whisper, we have lost the war. The Battle of Proxima Relay lasted 6 hours from first shot to final surrender. When it was over, the most feared fleet in the galaxy had been reduced to drifting wreckage by a single human ship with primitive weapons. Across the galaxy, beings who had lived in terror of Zephyrian quantum disruptors watched the recordings in stunned silence. The impossible had happened. The Zephyrian Empire, which had conquered 1,000 worlds through fear alone, had been defeated by a species that didn't know enough to be afraid. On the bridge of the Defiance, Captain Chen surveyed the damage around her. The ship had taken a beating, but human engineering had kept them fighting. Burned-out control panels sparked occasionally, and the air recycling system made worrying noises, but they were alive and victorious. Damage report, she requested. Hull breaches on decks 3 and 7, sealed and pressurized, Rodriguez replied. Main railgun battery is down to 60% capacity. We've lost 2 missile launchers and the backup navigation computer. Could be worse, Chen observed. What about the Zephyrians? Dr. Vasquez checked her sensors. 2 of their ships are completely disabled. The third, their flagship, is still technically operational but heavily damaged. I'm reading massive structural failures throughout their hulls. Any casualties? Their ships appear to be designed with excellent emergency systems. I'm detecting life signs on all 3 vessels, though many crew members are probably injured. Chen nodded. Despite being attacked without provocation, she felt no desire to slaughter helpless enemies. Open a channel to Admiral Kethrall. The view screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of the Void Render. The elegant crystal architecture was cracked and broken, sparks flying from damaged systems. Admiral Kethrall stood among the wreckage, his crystalline form dimmed with defeat. Admiral, Chen said formally, I'm prepared to accept your surrender. Your ships are disabled, and continued fighting will only result in unnecessary casualties. Kethrall stared at her for a long moment. In his entire military career, spanning over 2 centuries, no one had ever offered to accept his surrender. The Zephyrian Empire was the one that demanded surrender from others. How? He asked quietly. Our weapons are the most advanced in the galaxy. Our ships are the most powerful ever built. How did you defeat us with primitive technology? Chen considered the question carefully. Admiral, I think the problem is that you've been fighting the wrong kind of wars for too long. Your quantum disruptors are indeed very advanced. They're perfect weapons for intimidating enemies into surrender without fighting. But when someone actually wants to fight, they have serious weaknesses. What weaknesses? Kethrall demanded. They can destroy any matter at the molecular level. That's exactly the problem, Rodriguez interjected. They're too powerful. You've built siege weapons for ship-to-ship combat. They take too long to charge, they consume too much power, and they can't target fast-moving objects at close range. Dr. Vasquez pulled up a tactical analysis on her screen. Our railguns fire solid projectiles at 15% of light speed. Your shields can't stop them because they're designed for energy attacks. Your hull armor is crystalline, which makes it strong against directed energy but brittle against kinetic impact. Furthermore, Chen added, your entire tactical doctrine is based on long-range intimidation. You've never had to learn how to fight against an enemy that doesn't retreat when you point your big guns at them. Kethrall absorbed this information slowly. Everything the human said was correct, but it challenged fundamental assumptions about warfare that the Zephyrians had held for centuries. You could have destroyed us completely, he said. Why did you target only our weapons and engines? Because we're not monsters, Chen replied simply. You attacked us, so we defended ourselves. But that doesn't mean we want to commit genocide. This concept was as alien to Kethrall as quantum disruptors had been to the humans. The Zephyrian way of war was total domination, complete destruction of enemy forces and the will to resist. The idea of showing mercy to a defeated foe was incomprehensible. What happens now? He asked. Now we contact the Galactic Council and inform them that Earth is interested in joining as a peaceful member, Chen said. As for you, Admiral, I suggest you return to your empire and tell them that the age of ruling through fear is over. The transmission ended, leaving Kethrall alone with his shattered fleet and his shattered worldview. 3 days later, the emergency session of the Galactic Council was the largest gathering in the organization's history. Representatives from 400 worlds packed the Great Hall, all wanting to see the humans who had done the impossible. Captain Chen stood at the speaker's podium, looking calm and professional despite being the center of attention for half the galaxy. Beside her, Dr. Vasquez and Rodriguez waited patiently as Speaker Thelvan called for order. Captain Chen, Thelvan began, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I welcome you to this assembly. Your actions have changed the balance of power in our galaxy. Many worlds that lived in fear of the Zephyrian Empire are now free from that terror. Chen nodded respectfully. Thank you, Speaker Thelvan. Earth is honored to make contact with so many different civilizations. We hope to establish peaceful relationships and beneficial trade agreements with all council members. There are many questions about your military capabilities, pressed Ambassador Kroll. Your weapons seemed primitive, yet they defeated the most advanced fleet in known space. With respect, Ambassador, they weren't the most advanced, Chen replied. They were the most expensive and the most feared. There's a difference. Dr. Vasquez stepped forward to address the assembly. The Zephyrian weapons represented the absolute pinnacle of energy-based technology. But they were designed to fight the last war, not the next one. When faced with simple kinetic weapons and aggressive tactics, they proved inadequate. "Are you saying our entire understanding of military technology is wrong?" asked a representative whose species communicated through scent patterns. "Not wrong," Rodriguez answered. "Just incomplete. Energy weapons are excellent for certain applications: long-range bombardment, planetary siege, precision strikes. But in close combat against agile opponents, simple kinetic weapons are often more effective." The revelation sent shockwaves through the assembly. For centuries, the galactic understanding of warfare had been based on the assumption that more advanced meant more powerful. The humans had proven that sometimes simpler was better. "What are Earth's intentions now?" Delavan asked carefully. "Many worlds are concerned about human expansion," Chen smiled. "Earth seeks peaceful coexistence and mutual benefit through trade and cultural exchange. We have no desire to conquer or dominate other species. We've seen enough war on our own world to know that violence should always be the last option." "But you will defend yourselves," observed Dr. Zendari. "Of course," Chen replied. "Any species that tries to attack Earth or our allies will discover that we fight back. But we prefer to make friends rather than enemies." Over the following weeks, the political landscape of the galaxy transformed completely. The Zephyrian Empire, its reputation for invincibility destroyed, faced rebellions on dozens of worlds. Some surrendered peacefully, while others fought bitter campaigns for independence. The quantum disruptor, once the most feared weapon in space, became a symbol of outdated thinking. Military academies across the galaxy began studying human tactical doctrines, learning how aggression and adaptability could overcome technological superiority. Trade delegations from Earth spread throughout Council space, offering human technology and expertise in exchange for alien knowledge and resources. Human engineers, with their practical approach to problem-solving, found solutions to challenges that had puzzled alien scientists for generations. But perhaps the most important change was psychological. For the first time in galactic history, advanced weapons were no longer automatically associated with inevitable victory. The humans had shown that courage, creativity, and determination could triumph over fear and overwhelming odds. Dr. Zendari published a study that became required reading in military colleges across the galaxy. Her conclusion was simple but profound. The humans succeeded not because they were unafraid of quantum disruptors, but because they refused to let fear control their actions. They treated an impossible situation as merely another problem to be solved. 1 year after the Battle of Proxima Relay, Admiral Kethrall requested a meeting with Captain Chen at a neutral space station. The former commander of the most powerful fleet in the galaxy now served as a military advisor to the reformed Zephyrian Republic. "I wanted to thank you," he told her as they sat in the station's observation deck, watching ships from dozens of different worlds dock peacefully together. "Thank me for what?" Chen asked. "For showing us that there was another way," Kethrall replied. "The Zephyrian Empire ruled through fear for so long that we forgot what it meant to earn respect. Your people taught us that strength comes not from the power to destroy, but from the wisdom to build." Chen looked out at the busy space station, where humans worked alongside Zephyrians, Altarians, and dozens of other species. "Everyone deserves a chance to choose their own path, Admiral. Even former enemies." Thank you for watching and comment for next part.